Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. We'll move to adoption of our recommendation, which is the next item on the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the Joint Legislative Budget Committee recommendation for the fiscal year 2023?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The motion is to approve the FY 2023 budget recommendation in the amount of $5,824,812,943 in general funds, $561,859,710 in state support special funds, $16,771,851,438 in special funds, for a total of $23,158,524,091.
Need a motion. Second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. We need to make some brief remarks here. Speaker Gunn is back there on the phone somewhere. So we'll start. On the wall, each of you can see, and hopefully those of you who are watching elsewhere, which appears to be quite a number today, you'll see a Joint Legislative Budget Committee budget recommendation. And what we're going to do today is to discuss what the members of the House and the Senate have worked so hard on today to address the budget. Never in the history of Mississippi have we had as many opportunities and also plannings that we have to do for the state based on what has come here from the American Rescue Plan, as well as our own dollars that have been raised by the taxpayers. So the first, if you go to the first slide, please. Thank you, Leanne. This budget that you just heard to be adopted today maintains a 2% set aside for the general fund. Now that number is about, you'll see here, is about $129 million. It strengthens the state's financial reserves. We have been blessed to have financial reserves through this pandemic area that were not anticipated, certainly by me or by anyone else, I think, at this point, that have significantly given assets to the state to be expended for state issues. We built a budget here using only recurring funds. That is so important. Prior to my coming, members of the legislature have been very, very cognizant of the fact that we spend money on recurring revenue, and non-recurring funds should not be utilized for that. So we want to make sure that our budget balances not just only this year, but balances every year thereafter. So spending only on recurring funds is a critical aspect of what the Legislative Budget Office did today. Next slide, please, ma'am. So to get to the numbers, the general fund estimate, as you just heard, is $5,927 million. That's for fiscal year 2022. For next year, based on the increased revenue that we have received and the opinions of our state economists and also the numbers that we are watching closely, we adopted today, the Joint Committee adopted today, a fiscal year budget of $6,493,500,000. The fiscal year 2023 revenue estimate is, as you can see, $566 million over the fiscal year 2022 sine die, or last day estimate. So as you can see, we have accumulated an additional revenue estimate of $566 million, which has not been appropriate. Next slide, please, ma'am. The way we did this, and as I mentioned to you just a moment ago, $6,493,500,000 is the amount that was estimate from us. We did a 2% set aside. Historically, the legislature has done that in order to have funds in the event of a catastrophic event, a Katrina event or others, or just possibly inflation or other things that may attack the budget during the year. We started, legislature started a number of years ago setting the 2% set aside. There have been years in which the legislature has not been able to fund that 2% set aside, but in this year, the Legislative Budget Office and this committee has recommended we do so. That money is $129,870,000. The remaining 98% of general funds, which is $6,363,630,000, is, as you can tell, the general fund budget we just recommended is $5,824,812,943, leaving the reserves for the general fund of $538,817,057. Next slide, please, ma'am. The state support budget, this number, $6.386 billion, arrives at a number of additional funds that come to the state from various and sundry sources. This year, we have appropriated there is $573.9 million less than the fiscal year 2022 appropriated money. Next slide, please, ma'am. So what did we increase here? Members of the House and members of the Senate, after these meetings that you may have seen in the last two sessions, and then a lot of review by the Legislative Budget Office and the senators and the members of the House, we have adopted a state personnel board increase of $25 million. This is something called SEC squared. And what SEC squared was an effort for many years by our personnel board to bring our salaries in line with the outside world. As part of that, our personnel board recommended to us 2 or 3 different options. The first was, of course, take no action. The second was to bring us up to a minimum in comparison with outside market trends, which are, as you know, increasing now. In addition to that, we could fully fund to market. A fully funded market was about $93 million. We have recommended for these legislative budget that we spend $25 million, which actually brings us up to the minimum salary. This will increase salaries for a number of employees who are not at the minimum across state government. This is not a across-the-board raise and shouldn't be considered as such. This is a raise to bring people into the level of salary that is competitive with the outside market at a minimum value. The next one you'll see is the Department of Revenue. This may be of great importance to all those individuals out in the counties. Historically, the legislature had not had the funds to fully fund the Homestead Exemption reimbursement amount. That amount is about $90 million. This year, we increased by $11.5 million to fully fund the Homestead Exemption reimbursement. Basically, we give an additional $11.5 million, totaling $90 million back to the counties to cover the homestead exemption that individuals receive who own a home in Mississippi. That will allow an additional $11 million to be spent in the counties on roads and bridges and other matters that the counties need. The Department of Public Safety, you'll see a $3.8 million increase for sworn officers for Capitol Police. This is in line with what the legislature did last year. We moved the Capitol Police to the Department of Public Safety. Anyone who has a television set or a newspaper knows that we have increasing crime in our capital city. It is Mississippi's capital. And as such, the Mississippi legislature has appropriated these additional funds, which will provide an additional approximately 50 officers to be utilized by the CCID, the area around the Capitol here, all the way out to Jackson State University and out to the University of Mississippi Medical Center. It is our goal to have a safe place for Mississippians to come to their capital. So the Capitol Police funding is an additional $3.8 million. The Department of Mental Health, as many of you know, has been targeted by litigation, some of which we went to the trials here. There has been an individual appointed to work through areas that we need to do better on our mental health. Last year, the legislature made great strides in appropriating an additional $4.5 million to provide for mental health basically at the local levels, not by bringing them to a central location here in central Mississippi. That is working very well. Our efforts with the litigators, who's the Department of Justice, are on the settlement side now. We're working towards a common goal of meeting each and every requirement. This allows the legislature, and is their commitment, to do the right thing for people with mental health. So what we will be doing on the Utilization Review and Forensic Unit will be able to determine individuals who may be incarcerated or arrested whether or not they have a mental health issue and should be treated as such, or should they be in jail for a crime. Many of our sheriffs have told us that many of these individuals are in jail that really have mental health issues and should not be incarcerated in their normal process. This will accelerate that review, and we're pleased to do that so that we can then funnel them into the Department of Mental Health, where we're making great strides. In addition to that, we raised an additional $200,000 for district attorneys, basically in a new district, 23, which is up near DeSoto County. Next one, please, ma'am. So where does all of our money go? What's the 10 largest budgets? And this is very important. I want Mississippians to understand that over 50% of our budget goes to education. Over 50% of our budget goes to education. It is the legislature's commitment to what we consider to be the best workforce training effort we have, which is education. First, you'll see the Mississippi Adequate Education is $2,366 million. Medicaid gets $900 million. That Medicaid reimbursement is actually less than it was last year by about $60 million, but includes the fact that we got additional reimbursement from the federal government of about 5% of our Medicaid bills. So it is actually lower than it has been in prior years. Our debt service is $433 million. We have been watching very carefully our actual debt in Mississippi. It's approximately $4.3 billion, and it meets many of the criteria for having a AA rating for our state bonds, which keeps our interest rate low. We actually paid down principal debt last year. IHL is the letters for the institutions of higher learning, and that is our general support to colleges, and it's $360 million. Our correction system, the Legislative Budget Office was very pleased with the steps that have been taken in our correction system. They have opened Walnut Grove, which is an additional incarceration location for prisoners, and the actual commissioner, we believe, is doing an excellent job in starting the process of making sure that not only are individuals incarcerated safe during their incarceration period, but also have some skill when they rejoin society. Both of those were very important, and you see the increase that we have here for corrections to $318 million. Community colleges continue to be the first step for so many of our citizens, either on the technical training aspect or as the first steps towards a collegiate degree. We have the best community college system in the country here, and we support that, and the legislature, members of the House and the Senate on this committee continue to support that with $242 million budget. Mental health, as I indicated to you before, is a source of some litigation. We are in a settlement mode here with an individual appointed by the federal court to work with us. We are continuing to devote sufficient funds to mental health in order to meet all federal requirements and also Mississippians' requirements that we do the right thing. The University of Mississippi Medical Center is approximately a $1.6 billion enterprise. It involves training not only our dentists and our nurses and our doctors, but also providing services from cancer to child care through the Blair Batson and the Sanderson Center. Our support for the University of Mississippi Medical Center actually is only about 10% of its budget. It is, and from us, it's $171.5 million. On general education, that is $184.2 million. And on child protective services, which we just had hearings on this last time, they are making great strides. We have 3,800 children that are in foster homes here in our care. Many more are progressing through working out with the family members so that these children can stay in a home environment. Great work being done there. They are on a day-to-day basis providing great care to some of our most vulnerable children, and we are supporting them with a $112.1 million budget, which will be an increase this year. Next one, please, ma'am. This is the pie chart you see everywhere. It shows to Mississippians exactly where their money goes. And as I mentioned to you, over 50% of this budget is going to education and education-related matters. And then another significant portion goes to the healthcare portion of Mississippi. The remaining portions are outlined in the pie chart there. Next one, please, ma'am. We continue here, and I was very pleased with the actions of the Legislative Budget Office and our senators and representatives here, we have continued to make government be supportive of people at the least possible cost. We deleted funding in this budget for 2,538 vacant positions. Quite frankly, some of those will come back as we go through the process of the legislative meetings this next 3 months, and determining whether or not these individuals are needed. However, we start with a baseline of eliminating 2,539 positions in state government. Last year, over 500 were actually eliminated, and this continues that process of paying people what they're worth to keep good employees working for the state of Mississippi when they have many other alternatives, particularly now. And second of all, making sure that we're doing our core competencies well with the minimum amount of individual effort and employees. We also reduce funding for travel and contractual services across here. We try to pay attention to what's being done on contractual services in each one of our agencies. And we eliminated funds for one-time expenditures. Next one, please, ma'am. So now we come to the unallocated funds. This chart has never been seen before in Mississippi. I don't think it will ever be seen again. The you're hearing chuckling here because those of us have been here many years, like the speaker and others, have to agree with that. We've never seen anything like this. First of all, as you know, we received $1.8 billion from the Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund. Now, we received that in two tranches, $900 million and $900 million, but we have $1.8 billion. In addition, and we're going through in their hearings today in the Capitol about how to spend those funds, both from individual boards of supervisors, cities, counties, individual state agencies, state parks, which have dire need, and many other agencies that have dire needs that are able to be reimbursed for water, sewer, broadband, travel and tourism, and some of mental health and some education. They're all in that amount. And all of those funds will be utilized for the various things that have federal strings attached to them. After that, because of the tremendous sales that we have here, particularly sales and income tax increases in Mississippi, we have $1,092 million in a capital expense fund. That's the unexpended funds that we have generated from the taxpayers as they pay taxes on the many sales of everything from cars to whatever, if you can find a car in Mississippi right now. So all of those sales and whatnot have generated an additional $1 billion for us to work with. We have a working cash stabilization fund. That's sometimes called our rainy day fund. We fully funded that as well, and it is $556 million, basically 10% of our expenditures. What that means is that we're able to maintain a very positive rating on all of our bonds and pay a minimal amount of interest, and also is our rainy day fund in the event we have a catastrophic event. Our general fund budget is $538 billion. We have an education enhancement fund that's just generated by 1% of sales tax. And also money from the lottery. Last year that was about $53 million, I think. The Education Enhancement Fund now contains approximately $199.3 million. The 2% set aside that I discussed with y'all a little bit earlier is the 2% that we don't budget for every year that sits aside in the case that we needed to run the budget and a normal financial planning to have that set aside is $129.9 million. The Healthcare Expendable Fund, which comes to us from the tobacco funds and the others, is about $32.5 million. At the time that we had the BP settlement, the legislature prior to my getting here divided those funds basically 75% to the coast and 25% to the northern counties, not 6 counties. So that is split, as I mentioned, 75-35. It has about $30.7 million in the Gulf Coast Restoration Fund, and the BP Settlement Fund contains $23.1 million that can be spent north of the coast 6 counties. In addition to that, there are some special fund balances that are acquired by state agencies during the year from various and sundry either federal grants, additional fees, license fees, and others, and that's about $15 million. The grand total, I guess if you say this fast, it doesn't sound like as much as it is, but it's $4.424 billion is what is in the accounts as of the day we're doing this analysis today. Really an unheard of amount of money, and how it will be spent. The members of this committee and the members of the legislature will be challenged to make sure that this is generational, not 1 or 2 years, but 1 or 2 generations, and I think all the members of the legislature are committed to that. Next one, please, ma'am. So our budget highlights: we maintain a 2% set aside in general funds. We utilize recurring funds to support recurring expenditures. In other words, our revenue that you saw us appropriate here just a moment ago goes towards our recurring expenses for the education and everything else, over half of it for education. We increase the 23 state support for many important budgets. Mainly that's our SEC squared, our mental health, our child protective services, all of those ones that needed additional funding to perform their duties are in this budget. Many of them in the millions of dollars and some in the tens of millions of dollars. We have a reserve balance of about $4.4 billion. Next one, please, ma'am. So that is a summary of what we did. I want to turn to the speaker here for comments about the budget. And Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. First thing I'd like to do is thank this committee for their hard work on this budget. I agree with the Lieutenant Governor. He said, I don't know if we've ever seen this before, and we may never see it again. We have a tremendous opportunity here, and this is a result of the hard work of this committee. So thank y'all for your dedication and your willingness to come and serve and pour yourselves into this so that we can come forward with a solid budget. The second thing I'd like to do is thank Tony Greer and his team for doing this. They are the ones who went out at our instruction and put all this together and found it and made it happen. So I want to acknowledge them and all the hard workers over here, the hard work of all the people over here that made this happen. As we look at what we have and the amount of money that we have, I would just like to say that I think there's never a better time. As you said, this may be something we never see again. We have funded all of government. We got 2% set aside. We got money in the bank. We are doing all the functions of the things that we are charged to do, and we've got an enormous amount of money left over. I don't know if there's a better time for us ever to give some of this money back to the taxpayer. And we have talked a lot about ways to do that. I think now is the time. We have inflation rising, prices are going up. Our people need money in their pocket to adjust for that. We talked about giving raises to state employees, to teachers, to others. This would be a pay raise. If we could return some of their income to them, it would be like giving them pay raises. I would challenge this committee, and I would challenge both chambers. Let's find a way to get rid of this tax. Now is the time to give money back to these people. We've done everything. We've funded all the government. We got excess money. Let's give it back to the folks. Last thing I would say is today is December 7th. It's the 80th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I have had the opportunity to research a lot, read a lot about World War II in recent days. I've been very moved by the actions of the veterans who stepped up in World War II. My senior partner is Mr. Erskine Wells. I'm going to take a point of personal privilege. Mr. Erskine Wells was my senior partner. He's been dead for many years now. He was a decorated World War II hero in the Japanese Pacific Front. Led a bayonet charge at Guadalcanal. If you look at any book on World War II, an exhaustive treatment of World War II, his name will be in that book. He's Jacksonian. He was former president of Mississippi Bar. Briggs, I'm sure, knows who he was. Briggs is former president of Mississippi Bar, by the way. But today is a day of great sentiment, I think, for all of us as Americans. And, you know, we couldn't do what we're doing in here today were it not for the freedoms that we need. We couldn't come in here and do a budget. We couldn't go to the Capitol and debate democracy and have the opportunity to do what we all do without people like those who served in World War II, in Vietnam and others, who stepped up to provide us with the freedoms that we enjoy. So as we talk about all this, I don't think we need to overlook the fact that today is a very significant day. I don't think any of us were around. You were, John was, okay? John Reed was around.
I wouldn't go there.
Well, I want you to know.
What do you remember about it, John?
Well, they declared war on the 8th. That was my 6-month birthday.
Okay, so you've been here for 6 months. Anyway, I just felt like it's appropriate for all of us to acknowledge that as we sit here today. So, thank you, Lieutenant Governor. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. And I'm going to ask President Pro Tem, any comments?
Well, thank you, Governor. There is one thing that I thought I might bring out. I've had a few calls on the SEC Square from some state employees. Some of them are afraid that their salaries may be cut. My understanding is that no salaries will be cut and that only increases in salaries will take effect for those that are deserving of an increase in salary.
That's accurate.
Thank you.
And they need to be working really hard. They don't have to be worried about getting a cut. Pro Tem, you good? John? Trey? Everybody good? John on? Joey? Good? Everybody good? Briggs? We want to thank everybody for coming today. I too am remembering I had the honor of being invited to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait, and went with our soldiers over there at different times. But I remember Dad coming home and from the war and having all of his friends over at the house for barbecues in my earliest years, remembering them all coming over there and talking, never about the war. It was all just fellowship and friendship. You never heard one of them talk about, and he served in the specific, he was in something called Scouts and Raiders, which is now the SEAL program. And to listen to those men visit and talk and just have casual conversations at around the barbecue and all that other kind of stuff that went on, and then read later, as you are, Mr. Speaker, about the literal hell they lived through and fought through, and some of them died through. It's amazing that they were able to come back and build a country that we enjoy today. So with that, with no other, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're adjourned.